So it's been 1 week since Apple announced iPadOS 26, which basically overhauled the entire iPadOS. Is it even worthwhile buying an iPad just for this update? And first things first, I want to talk about the liquid glass, which is all over iPadOS 26. It looks absolutely stunning on this tandem OLED 13-inch display. And even if you go into the notification center, you can see the glass kind of refracting off the notification sheet. Now, readability could be a huge concern, especially if you look at the lock screen with your notifications coming in. Depending on your wallpaper, it may be hard to read some notifications, but if you use the stock wallpaper, of course, that's going to be easier to see. Now, you can enable dark mode to mitigate this issue, or even go into the accessibility and increase the contrast to get rid of all the glassy elements altogether, but that takes away the fun. And even if you tilt the iPad around, you can see the glass reflecting off the UI. All the details aside, what about the actual iPadOS? I was very surprised to see how much Apple crammed into this update. First things first, multitasking has been redesigned from the ground up. I wasn't a huge fan of Stage Manager on both macOS and iPadOS, but this year Apple gave iPadOS proper window management. So what this means is I can open up an app and it comes up as a resizable window. So I can open up the calculator, Twitter, Instagram, Safari, so many more apps, and you can resize them. The performance is definitely going to vary on your iPad. So multitasking and the window management is Mac-like, but it's not exactly the same thing. On macOS, you have different desktops that you can have different applications, but on the iPad, you don't have different desktops. You don't have that luxury like how it is on macOS. Taking it a step further, Apple added in the menu bar. Now, the menu bar, as simple as it is, this brings a world of difference to the iPad. And what that means is whatever app that I'm on, I can hover over on the top center portion of the display. And this is gonna vary on what application that you're on. And alongside with that, very familiar, you have the red, yellow, and green buttons. So you can close out the app, you can minimize it, or you can maximize the application. But if you click and hold that green button, you can arrange the apps. It can snap it on the left side, right side, center, and it's just gonna just keep everything unified. Very nice. You have the preview app here, so you can annotate PDF files. And I think this is very convenient on the iPad, just thanks to that Apple Pencil. And you no longer need to download the Adobe app or Notability or Good Notes or anything like that, because now you have the preview app to annotate those PDF files. You know, Files apps is something that I don't really use too much on the iPad, but maybe thanks to this update, I could probably maybe get back into using it. Which, by the way, if you guys want to see a video replacing my MacBook in replacement of the M4 iPad Pro, the M4 iPad Pro is the best way to experience iPadOS 26. I'm unsure about the other iPads. I'm very curious to see how it's going to perform on my iPad mini. If I can find it, where is my iPad mini? I'm still running iPadOS 18 here, so I gotta see how that's gonna be with the screen real estate. But in terms of the M4, it's something that I enjoy using, and especially if you have the Magic Keyboard, so you can perform those shortcuts. And I even forgot to mention, there's a new mouse cursor, so it's very Mac-like. So that's the running theme of iPadOS 26, is to make it more Mac-like, but it's not exactly there yet. I feel like the app switcher needs an overhaul. It's cool, but it feels weird to use when you have so many windows open, because if I multitask with multiple windows, it feels a little cluttered in a sense. Now, quick side note, I did try to install this on my iPhone 16 Pro, and it was a world of disaster. This was put into a boot loop. It said the battery was dying and I couldn't get it to work, and I had to basically restore my iPhone 16 Pro from the ground up, rolling back to iOS 18. Now, thankfully, I did back up my data, but I want to transition to the actual iPad. 1 year later, the M4 iPad is one of my favorite Apple devices. You have an incredible display on both models, the 13-inch and the 11-inch model. That tandem OLED really packs a punch here, especially if you're watching movies or TV shows or any kind of media consumption, and even games too. This looks stunning. It looks even better than even my studio displays here. So This display is absolutely incredible. That was one of the main reasons why I upgraded to this from my M1. The M1 with this mini LED display is good and all, but nothing beats that tandem OLED, stitching two OLED panels together to accomplish that brightness, and you have those inky blacks. There's no display like no other than the M4 iPad, especially that larger 13-inch display. And I must say, the thinness and the lightness of this iPad is incredible. Apple was the first to do it. This is the world's thinnest Apple device. We gotta wait until the iPhone 17 Air release, but yeah, this lightness is incredible, especially coming from an older iPad. You know, this iPad is so thin, coming in at 5.1 millimeters for the 13-inch model, that even the Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge, which review on this coming soon, it's even thinner. The iPad is even thinner than the S25 Edge. And this is the thinnest and lightest Galaxy phone that Samsung ever made. The fact how you get all this power, all this greatness of that tandem OLED display, that is incredible. And that's a well done on the engineering team at Apple. And also too, the Face ID and the front facing camera has been flipped over to the landscape side. That's definitely a good move. The M4 iPad is so good that Apple can skip out this year, which that's not gonna happen. They're gonna push forward for the M5 iPad, but I would even still recommend the M4 just because, well, it's so good. It's so good. Chances of the M5 is gonna feature the same design, same specs, but just a chip spec bump, and that's about it. And in terms of the Magic Keyboard, this is also a big improvement too as well. You have a more premium finish, you have the function keys. It's something that we should have had since the original Magic Keyboard. I did review the M4 iPad Pro already, but one of the things that really held it back was its software. But iPadOS 26 really did push the boundaries of the M4 iPad Pro. It's not perfect, you know, but it is a right step. And I'm very curious to see what Apple's gonna do for future iPadOSs. Like, what features are we gonna get next on iPadOS 26.1 or 0.2 and 0.3? Very curious. If this is good, it's probably gonna get even better. The day that they announced you could run DMG files or Mac apps on an iPad using iPadOS, man, that would solidify the iPad to be a MacBook killer right there. Just from that alone, just because we have Final Cut Pro for the iPad, it's not the same experience as the MacBook Final Cut Pro. I know this iPad had a lot of interesting design languages, such as a one camera on the back and the LiDAR. We are gonna need that for document scanning. I think Apple definitely did revise the iPads yet again. Just to answer the question, should you go out and buy M4 iPad Pro just for iPadOS 26? I would say it depends. It depends on what iPad you have. If you can't run iPadOS 26, I would say this is a no-brainer. Now, I would argue that the M1 or the M2 is going to perform just as well with iPadOS 26, but if you have an A series chip, that's going to be very interesting because I got to see how this is going to run on an iPad mini. So I may have to do another updated video on that and do my testing, which I am going to be doing more videos. I think it's worthwhile buying an iPad just for iPadOS 26. It's really that good. And it also just depends on your setup too as well, but it definitely did transform the iPad in a big way. And I'm very curious to see how it's going to be in the future.